Awesome. All right, welcome back to another episode of Bootstrapping to Billions. Today we have a boots on ground ownable series where we're going to go through a decade-long journey. Welcome to the pod, Austen Allred. We appreciate you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Man, you're good at this. That intro is so solid.
So this is gonna be a boots on ground episode. We're gonna be covering a decade-long journey, right? We're gonna be talking about the peaks and valleys that is building a business. We're gonna go from the venture-backed story back in 2017, where he raised $100 million in the market. And we're going to go to where we are today, building a profitable business that was market-led, driven by a client customer, solving a problem that you were able to lean into and expand from, doing something very cool for the ecosystem, especially in this moment of time where we are right now, finding AI-forward talent as you're working towards building the place to go when it comes to making a company AI first. We appreciate you for joining us today. We appreciate to be able to extract the live-learn lessons. Let's sink on into it. It is 2017. Everything starts somewhere. Take us back to the beginning. Bloom Tech. Things are getting started. Where were we?
Let me think what I would tell my therapist. All right. So we started a little code boot camp where the shtick was you didn't pay us until after you were hired. Turns out that idea was really taking off. We got into Y Combinator, raised a bunch of money. We were one of the hotter companies in Silicon Valley for a while, ended up raising more than $100 million from all the big name investors. And I know what it's like to be a hot girl on campus. I think for a little bit, the business never quite caught up with the hype that was pretty extreme. And so we rode that wave all the way up and all the way down, up to, we had 200 plus people in a beautiful downtown office in San Francisco, and people sending us gifts and giving us courtside tickets to everything, And then fast forward a few years later, and I had laid off everybody except for 5 people. We had spent like a year and a half with less than a month of runway, just, hand to mouth fighting and to stay alive. And eventually, ended up in a good spot where we are now, where we're, profitable, plugging along. But it was a wild ride that we don't need to go into all the details of, but there's a lot there. Yeah.
A journey and a half for sure. And I know that it's much harder living in the moment and living through the moment for sure. But to take a second to just elevate and celebrate the journey in which you were, because, this is Bootstrapping to Billions, and there's a lot of folks listening right now that have the opportunity to be able to extract the live-learn lessons from this Pay It Forward episode, quite literally. And we're on a path to profitability. So we're going to be joining and focusing in terms of the pathway to profitability and how you've been able to follow essentially the money to a certain extent to be able to design, develop, deliver the model around Gauntlet AI, which is the heart of the story today, right? So going from 100 mil plus raised all the way to what we're doing today in terms of the market and everything in between, focusing in terms of where the problem is. Take us to the transition moment, right? So we started in 2017. At what moment in time did we kind of transition in terms of this focus with Gauntlet AI, in terms of what we're focusing on today? And where did that come from?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that happened is the market slowly fell out from underneath us. Even, the extent of the code bootcamp world just slowly crumbled over several years to the point that I don't know any code bootcamp that survived and is doing well. Hiring of junior engineers just kind of went through the floor. And whether that's blamed on zero interest rates kind of going away or AI coming into the forefront, we were kind of scrambling, trying to find a foothold on anything. To give you an idea, there was a time when we were burning, I think it was like $8 million a quarter. And I didn't sleep it was very, very stressful. And then so we went around and asked all of our hiring partners, like, hey, is there anything that you want or anything that you need? What can we do for you? And we started to get an answer back that they would all say, hey, we want our people to learn how to use AI. And this is back before GPT was even, this is before the AI that we know today, or the very, very early stages of it. And so we'd say, okay, AI, what does that mean for you? What do you want to be able to do with AI? And they were basically like, we don't know. It's just really interesting. And we see there's opportunity there, but if you will go figure out what works and come back and teach it to us, we'll happily pay for that. So we sent out a research team. They talked to hundreds of companies, found that 99% of them weren't actually using AI in the way that they claimed to use AI. It was all very smoke and mirrors and pretty fake, to be honest, at the time. But there were a handful of people who had actually figured out how to use the early AI to get leverage. So we started teaching an online course where, pay me $5,000 per engineer and I'll teach that engineer how to use AI. And we would go and sell enough seats every month to be at break even. And that was it for probably a year. And then what we do today kind of came out. I mean, it did come out of that. And we had one of our bigger customers that kept sending 100 people at a time to our training, which was going to save the company, to be totally blunt. And so I started digging in with them and just being like, what are you seeing? What's exciting to you? And they said, look, when we send 100 engineers, they're a PE fund. They religiously measure everything. They're buying companies that are got over their skis, kind of like we were, to be honest. And then they figure out how to turn those companies around. And a lot of it is by like just sheer optimization of labor force and costs and all that stuff. So they knew very, very well how productive each engineer was. And they said that when they sent them through our course, all of a sudden those engineers' productivity would double. And it wasn't because of us. It was just they were actually using AI for the first time. And so they saw that again and again. And then Gauntlet, as we know it today, Gauntlet AI, which is our company, I will happily admit that it was not really my idea. It was this company called me in and said, look, we've been working with you for a decade now. We love the way that you build and run schools. We trust you. We want to build and run an AI training program where it's a lot more immersive than paying part-time, remote only. Like, I want people in person. We're in Austin. I wanted to fly people in. I'll cover their costs. I'll cover hotels. I'll cover food. And if you can train them in AI and get them totally immersed in AI, I'll pay you per person and I'll guarantee to hire everybody at the end of it, so long as they meet these criteria. So we worked on it with them. And Gauntlet cohort 1 was basically for that company. It wasn't going to be a company. We were just a service provider of this internal training program for one of our hiring partners. And so, again, Gauntlet wasn't really my idea. It was literally a company saying, this is what we want. And then we would have people come by the Gauntlet office and just talk to people and see what they were doing and see what they were able to do with AI. And, we joked that every single person that walks through the door was instantly like, when is the next cohort? How can we hire? What do we need to do to like get these people on my team? And I had to be like, look, this isn't they're not mine to give you, right? This is all for a company that is already planning on hiring them. I can't shuffle them out the back door and have them go to you instead. So we started talking with that company and they were like, you know what, we'll take a handful of people and you can let other companies hire them because we want this to become a self-sustaining thing. And I was like, look, there was no plan for a second cohort. It was just a one-time, one-off thing at the time. I was like, I think that if you'll let me, I'll cover all the costs next time. And we had $0 in the bank, but I'm talking about, covering millions of dollars in flights and hotels and food and all this stuff. I can find a way to cover the costs if I can get the employers that want to hire these people to prepay us to do a second cohort. And then if you guys want to participate in that second cohort, you can, prepay us instead of post paying us. It's going to be a little bit more because we're going to cover all the big costs now. But if you guys are open to that, like we could keep this going and you could have a continual pipeline of people coming in where you don't have to cover these insane, multi-million-dollar costs for everything. And said, yeah, we're in, let's do it. And that became Gauntlet.
Let's do it for sure. And let's take a second to pause, celebrate, and elevate and appreciate essentially what is becoming a heart of a bootstrap story. I know that we talked about raising a ton of money at first, but it's almost like, what is that, like Icarus or whatever, fly too close to the sun type of thing. We are now boots on ground, quite literally finding profitability in this. And the story starts with a person asking for the service. A private equity firm was a relationship and they're like, hey, can you spin this up and do this? Like, you have a ton of experience and we know because we worked with you for a decade doing something similar. Like, this is a moment in time. Like, let's capture the efficiency, the effectiveness, the lift in productivity from deploying AI in terms of our talent and seeing if something actually could be done here. You then did that in cohort 1. And that private equity firm, whose literal business is to measure productivity and efficiency as a playbook, was like, this thing worked. And it worked because, for the first time, talent was able to unlock the exponential value in terms of productivity lift of AI. And you're able to deliver that and deploy that. And then in terms of bringing it to a model that worked, other folks saw it and they're like, I want that. And you're like, well, I can't because we're doing it for them. But is there a model here for self-sustaining sufficiency? And that's the playbook in which you were able to build and back into around, hey, let's stand this up. Let's fly folks in. Let's do it on our dime. Let's create something that could actually be built here, which is where we are right now with Gauntlet. So I think that it's phenomenal. And I genuinely think that we should stop and for a second and also like really pause for the audience listening, because it's like follow the money for a certain extent. And oftentimes it's, what is somebody asking for? And in this situation, it was a private equity firm. It was validate it, sell it, make it, exit it, validate it, do it. Does it work? In this situation, it did. A moment in time for sure, lightning in the bottle. So this is also like right timing perspective as well. And having the right skills, abilities, and traits to be able to lean into it. And then the ability to expand it and sell it to more, right? To get into it. So when we're talking about developing the market, once you knew the model existed, like how did it take shape in terms of truly being able to build it to where it is today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I kind of look at it in 2 phases. And this is something that I struggle with a lot as a founder, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it. Phase 1 is definitely like me just being as scrappy as I possibly can. Calling everybody I've ever met, talking, emailing. Literally it was just me trying to talk to everybody saying, come look at what's happening in this Gauntlet. You'll be blown away. Please invite your friends to come see it. And really, the number one metric that I was going for is just how many people can I get through the door to do a tour of like what, see what's possible with AI. Because to some extent, we're selling, access to people and we're selling our ability to select people. But especially in the early days, companies had no idea what was even possible with AI. So to give you an idea, on the first week of the first cohort, we said, look, you're all engineers. None of you are going to be allowed to write any code in this entire thing. And we had people that literally just like checked out and bailed because of that. They're like, there's no way these AI models can write enough code or do it well enough that this is going to be worthwhile. This is all just going to be crap. And we knew enough to know that there is a way that you can have AI write really good code. And now it's 10 times easier than it was then.
Yeah, give us a framework. What's the timestamp?
I mean, Cursor had just barely, so it was January of 25. So Cursor was brand new. Sonnet 3.5 hadn't released yet. Like the state of the art was like early ChatGPT, the earliest of Sonnet. Claude, like most people didn't know what Claude was at the time. And no one had heard of Anthropic really. A lot of the companies that you talk to were like, yeah, we use GitHub Copilot, which does some like autocomplete. Like the models weren't good. And
which is crazy, right? For like the amount of time.
Up until Cursor, for a while you had to like basically build what's now Cursor or Claude code on yourself and pipe your own data to all the right places so that the AI would be able to work at all. This is the first time where that was like a little bit is established enough that you could get it up and running quickly without, and when we were first teaching the AI for developer productivity course, it was literally a month of data infrastructure and like training on your own data so that it could write code reasonably well. Now that's all free. And now it's, that and 10 times more is all free and instant.
And what cohort are we on right now? Just for reference.
So we have cohort 6 in the building right now.
Cohort 6. Okay, so cohort 1 was January 2025, and today we are on cohort 6. When did cohort 6 start?
Let's see. So they came into Austin 2 weeks ago. So every cohort is 10 weeks. We do 3 weeks remote and then 7 weeks in person. So they would have started about 5 weeks ago.
About 5. And take us through. So like for the audience listening, like when you say a cohort, like what is that? Because you've created an experience here. Like there's like legitimately an awesome experience that folks that are talent, because you're finding and attracting top talent in the market. You're bringing them into to run the gauntlet in a sense. Yeah. You're bringing them on in, you're attracting them in, and they go through this experience because earlier you were also like, I wanted people to see the experience, right? From the employer side. So you're creating an experience on both sides. Take us through like what that experience of a cohort is.
Yeah, so I'll take you through the student experience first, because that once you understand the student experience, and we call them challengers because The reason we called it Gauntlet is every week there's a new challenge, and if you don't make it through that week, then you go home, basically.
Because you're filtering, you're essentially creating a mechanism
Yeah.
to filter top talent through it, which
Yeah.
is
I mean,
good.
that's another, born out of the experience of trying to run schools for a decade. If you can take the people that aren't really a good fit and filter them out, it's better for everybody. And, normally in a school, you end up spending 90% of your time and effort and energy on the bottom 10%. So frankly, we kind of said, what if we just didn't have them and we could spend our time and effort in the right place? So for a student, you come on and apply. And we do what's basically an IQ test, and we filter for 98th percentile and above of raw IQ, which is another perhaps unconventional thing that we do. And then we do a code challenge, but the coding challenge isn't really that significant to us. If you're really smart, we can figure out the rest. And then you do the first 3 weeks are remote. If you make it through the remote portion, then we fly you out to Austin. We have housing here for you. We have food. We have a giant DoorDash budget for you. We have somebody that cleans your room and does your laundry, and just try to get all the distractions out of the way so you can lock in with us in Austin for 7 weeks. We have a team of instructors, a team of guides, and their entire job is just to get you to the absolute cutting edge of AI. And as long as you can get to the cutting edge of AI and ride that wave, you're set. And starting in week 5, you'll start meeting the employers who actually pay for the entire program. So employers have to prepay and purchase hiring credits in order to come meet the people who are in the program. So they'll come in starting week 5, 6, and 7. So today we have our gold hiring partners in. There's probably 16 to 20 of them. And they just come in and we have a portal and we match everybody and they can meet everybody, but it's like the craziest job fair, but real that you'll ever do. So there are a lot of students that are doing, 16 first round interviews this week. We require our hiring partners to hire at a minimum of 200K. That's the minimum. So as a challenger, you know that you're going to walk away with at least a job that pays 200K, ideally more. And there are companies that are here because they want to hire AI first talent. They want to unlock you and let you do all the AI stuff and not hold you back. So
Yeah, no, it's quite literally like build the better mousetrap is kind of what I hear. It's like if you have the best opportunities in the form of experience for the talent and offers for the talent, and you can attract the top talent. If you're attracting the top talent, then you make it really difficult for the cream to rise to the top, essentially, so that you actually have the top talent. And then once you have the top talent, you're creating this experience around them, but then be able to gate it and bring in the employers to be able to deliver the value and monetize the value, which is being created through this entire ecosystem. It's like super cool. And it's like like this to me is just such a cool model, but it sounds easy. I'm sure it's not to execute because
no, not at all. I mean,
I'm thinking this through. It's like so many logistical, like operational excellence. So you got to find folks. So who would be a good fit? So audience listening right now, who would be a good fit for this program to run through the gauntlet?
I mean, basically, if you're a software engineer, it's rare that we accept somebody with 0 experience. It's very different pitch to employers if you're like, this person's never coded before, but they can use AI. Like that's not really our MO. So we're looking for somebody with experience who's really smart and really hardworking, and we can take care of the rest. So if you're a software engineer who wants to learn what the cutting edge of AI is like, and I didn't mention this before, but the Gauntlet is completely free for the students forever, no matter what. So even if you come out and you decide not to take a job with one of our hiring partners, there's no clawback. There's nothing you owe us. We take that risk on and we'll cover your rent and your food and whatever else. And
it's free in all parts. So it's free when you take the initial screening and selection, like the IQ test, the code challenge, and the first 3 weeks remote. That's free.
Everything is completely. Students will never pay us a penny ever, no matter what. So
including
the entire
like coming out to Austin,
we fly you out. We cover your housing. We cover your food. We fly you back home. We cover your compute, which, if you're familiar with the AI space, can cost more than rent sometimes. So we cover all the costs and eliminate all the distractions and just. So we have never to date billed a single student for a penny of anything, and we don't plan to.
Sick. So it's covered by the employer, which is only justifiable if you're truly capturing top talent and putting them through a program that actually performs. which we know from the very beginning it did because we had a private equity firm that put it through the ringer. It's only gotten better.
Yeah.
5 cohorts later, essentially.
I
What
keep
happened?
wondering every now and then why we don't have competitors. And then I think about what it would take to start a true competitor to us. Like you'd have to, I mean, they told us up front that basically, look, we have enough of a relationship with you. We know how you build curriculum. We know how you build, like, we trust you. We know that you can find and produce talent. They, they trained and hired more than 100 people at 200K plus each. And then they covered costs on top of that. So they looked at it as a single $20 million bet that
Yeah,
this was going to work
so
out.
like let's talk about this. So like from a employer perspective, who are they getting? Like who are they ultimately placing? Like what are they unlocking inside of their organization?
Yeah, it's a
What is
lot
the
easier
role?
now
Like what's
than,
the role of the person?
yeah. So they kind of fall into a few different buckets. The main one we just call AI engineer. So it's just a software engineer who knows how to use AI. I mean, the reason this all works is AI is probably the biggest force multiplier for human talent that there has ever been. And at any company, there are a handful of people that really move the needle. And I mean, it's literally the stuff that I have to, refer to is just it's now more believable. In the early days, people thought I was completely full of it.
It was forward
But
looking, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was literally like, hey,
Cohesive.
we dropped this engineer in this org and this company that religiously measures all the output of everything. This guy's outputting more than the next 15 people combined because he's using AI and leveraging it really well. Like that
Yeah.
seemed like science fiction a year and a half ago. Now people kind of
You
buy
never know
that.
that's the case, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, literally, I used to have an engineering team back in the glory days of 75 people, and we were trying to build software to manage the student information system and all this stuff. I have a team now of like 4 engineers, and we have software that does absolutely everything from food ordering to flights and hotels and grading and room accommodations and scheduling clean. Like everything is all software for us. Otherwise, there's no possible way we could do this.
Mhm.
And we can do that with a couple of engineers. So that's basically what we sell is we'll find you those engineers who you can drop into your org and they can completely change everything. At the higher side, we'll have what we call our platinum partners. Those are bigger companies that are looking to completely revamp and, they're buying 15 to 20 hiring credits at a time. They're looking to bring on entire teams of people and completely change the way that they're doing everything. Those are big bets, right? And then we go down, we have publicly traded companies that are doing a lot of people down to small startups that, they're hiring a founding AI engineer and they just need someone who can build everything and know how to use AI. And there's a kind of a spectrum. There's leadership folks, there's forward deployed, which are more like, send them to a customer and they can figure out what needs to be built and build it really fast. So there's all sorts of different flavors within it, but basically it's someone who's both an engineer and an expert in AI.
So I understand the talent side. So I understand the mechanism, the process in which you're putting in place to capture talent, convert talent through this program to be able to deliver talent. Are you doing things on the company side as well? So are you also giving the company kind of frameworks and processes? And because essentially it's like almost a plug and play transformational change agent. Like everybody
Yeah.
wants to go through this transformational change at this moment in time. There's definitively budget for it. And it sounds like what you have is definitely a plug and play, at least from the talent side, to be able to plug into transformational change. But like, are you doing other things as well? Like,
Yeah, we started out doing the rest of it kind of unofficially. Like, hey, if you're going to hire a bunch of people, like, we'll bring the team together for a couple of days and we'll show you what's what and we'll show you how to do everything. That became a much more formalized program about a year ago to where in between cohorts, we'll fly groups of people out. We'll sometimes do it, depending on the scale, we can do it like a pod at a time where it's like, hey, send us a couple engineers, a product manager, a designer, and give us a week or two, and we'll turn that team AI first, basically. So a lot of companies now will do a combination of both of those. They'll either do some training and some hiring because you already have great people. They're just not AI first. We want to, we're not going to tell you to fire your great team and replace them with us. Some people do. I'm not saying I recommend that, but so we do a little bit of both with everybody. On the higher scale of things, we'll send our team in to do total transformation of big companies where we've got to we've got to cold turkey figure out how to get this company off of the old way of doing things and get them used to AI. And those are some of the most fun for me, because one of the first things we do is like we lay out a 6-month roadmap. And we don't tell all the companies that we're doing this, but we try to see if we can complete that 6-month roadmap in 2 weeks. And we've done that every time so far. And when companies see that, it's like, oh, this is fundamentally different than what we were expecting. This is a completely different way to build businesses, to hire, to sell, to do everything. It's just a completely new world. And most companies, even the companies that you think of as being on the front lines of that, are usually very, very slow and much further behind than you would guess from the outside.
Yeah, let's talk about ICP fit on the company side, because I'm listening to this, and I love to nerd out on just Mike models in general. And I'm thinking about this. I'm like, man, he's kind of solving for something here in a couple of different ways. Definitely a moment in time. This is like almost like a lightning in the bottle type of moment in time, like capture electricity while it's there, and it's definitively there. Like nobody at this point can refute that. It just is what it is. You're plugging in talent. So you have one problem where you're sourcing talent. You're putting them through this gauntlet, this ringer, qualifying them, vetting them, filtering them, and then plugging them in to organizations who want to be AI first. But then it also sounds like every organization you capture, you're also sourcing talent internally, because folks that have companies have people, because great people make great businesses. They don't want to let go of their great people. They just want to repurpose their great people. So it also becomes like a retooling, retraining, initiative as well. So it's like you're solving two problems in one every time you solve for a net new client, I guess, if you're talking about the company being the client. So let's talk for a second about the ICP fit of who like a great client would be. So if somebody's listening in the audience and they're like, hey, am I a fit? Or do I know somebody who's a fit? Like what would be a fit?
Yeah, they're varying stages, right? Like, and the way that we, when we're working with our, sales and our customer success team and our AEs, whatever you want to call them, the first thing that we want to do is really understand the company deeply, because we'll recommend different things based on what stage you're at, right? Like the needs of a 2-person startup that's just raised a bunch of venture capital and they're going to go out and hire and try to do stuff, and a giant company that has a bunch of legacy systems and people and they're trying to figure out how to turn that ship around. They share so few needs and constraints that we bucket them totally separately and talk to them completely differently. So there's kind of different stages and different recommendations we make. There's a blend kind of in the middle where most companies probably, most CTOs that we talk to, I'm not going to go into that. So there are different approaches depending on what the different levels of buy-in are at the executive level, because it's rare that we see a CEO who's super bullish on AI and a CTO and a head of HR. Usually there's like at least one stick in the mud or some hesitancy, or some people that aren't totally bought in, so you approach those differently. But to go up to the bigger side, we work with publicly traded companies. We work with even to the fund, their entire PE funds and VC funds that will.
I think that model makes a ton of sense, because those are folks that quite literally need to go through, like they're constantly acquisition disposition, and there's like a real reason definitively.
I just got back from an LP conference where it was the PE fund basically saying, look, because we have Gauntlet, that gives us a unique, like their entire prospectus was all about, we can hire from Gauntlet and we can use them to retrain all of our people. Now we have an edge over the market. We can, run our vertical SaaS completely
and
differently.
And it's plug and play across portfolio, because you have a playbook.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah. Like I think that the model makes a ton of sense. I'm also thinking though, like legacy market. I'm trying to think like through ICP fit, vertical fit of legacy market. Because like the startup side, like recently raised, makes a ton of sense, because you get the raise, then you get the mandate to go higher. Like similar to yourself, 2017, go to 200, right? Like we all see that. We're forced there from VC oftentimes. So that makes sense.
Actually, my favorite companies are the ones where like, I often use an analogy of like, if you look at Africa, they never had Wi-Fi, so they have the best 5G networks ever. There are companies that like they don't really have a software engineering org, but you can kind of skip all of that and just drop a couple of AI engineers in. We usually use the forward deployed engineer or two in those circumstances. And
define forward deployed engineer, because you said that earlier too, for the audience listening, because this has been thrown out there on the interwebs a ton. Like for this show with our audience, like what is a forward deployed engineer?
Yeah, it's one
AI
of those
forward deployed
ill-defined
engineer.
buzzwords. But yeah, the way I think of a forward deployed engineer is it's someone who understands the business well enough, whether it's customer facing or whether it's internal, that they're going to come in, figure out what needs to be built and build it all at once. Historically, a lot of engineers would be like sitting in a basement and you give them a ticket and you tell them exactly what to build. The more forward deployed someone is, in my mind, is just the more they are, meeting with people, trying to gather requirements, trying to figure out what actually needs to be built. Some people will compare it to like a solutions engineer, but I actually don't think it's that. A solutions engineer was kind of like a salesperson who kind of speaks tech. This is more a tech person who kind of does sales, if that makes sense, or customer relationships or whatever. But we even use that word internally to be like, hey, you're just going to be the AI czar and you're going to run all through this organization, meet as many people as you can, and figure out how to streamline and automate and fix
The
as much
change
stuff as you
maker.
possibly can. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like the
exactly.
organizational
Yeah.
change maker in this moment in time. Dig it, dude. When you were talking about, getting back into the vertical of somebody who does not have a software engineering and could just plug this forward deployed engineer in and make the big, like, what would be a
I'm
good
jealous of those
example?
companies.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
give us a couple of examples here of that.
So, I mean, one example is there's like a big, I'm not sure if I
Are you
can
talking like
mention it, but
manufacturing companies or
like
like
literally
trade?
a toy company that like another is like a vacuum cleaner company that, they have like a Shopify, Salesforce backend, but they don't have
Non-traditional
software to
tech.
speak of.
So anyone
Yeah.
that's non-traditional tech, essentially, this is a moment in time to essentially become tech native by figuring
You
out how
can,
to
you can kind of
deploy it across
leapfrog
your
it,
entire,
right?
yeah.
Because 5 years ago, if you would have said, I mean, an example that I give is, we had a company that they'd been talking to the board about, hey, we really should have a mobile app. So we need to go either find an agency or like find a mobile app development team. So that's going to be like, 3 or 4 hires. It's going to take about a year to build this app. They came in and just as like this was in cohort one, we had somebody take their app that they wanted to be built and build it in 48 hours and
Yeah.
they just deployed it. Like that was
Yeah, we're in like a ready, set,
completely
go moment.
unthinkable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild. Dig it. So, dude, so you've identified the market. I essentially have created this opportunity, which it sounds like you're still trying to figure out what's the perfect fit. And it seems like maybe, it could be potentially pretty wide in terms of on the buy side, on the client side, on the company side that's feeding
There's
into
kind
the
of, I mean,
model.
we don't say it this way, but there's unique offerings, right? Like what the toy company needs is not what a startup needs. And we have different people that we filter into different ones and different training that would, be somewhat bespoke.
Would you
But
stand
yeah,
up a program specific to a client? So, I'm trying to think of making this model, making this market, and then scaling this thing. And how big do you want to take? Like,
yeah,
what is this thing? Like, if you're to take us, like,
yeah.
where this is going to go next, like, paint a picture of the future in terms of what you
I mean,
think.
so to give you an idea, and these are numbers that I only share because you people actually probably care about the business side of things. So we went from like zero, had nothing in January of 2025 and did just over 15 million in revenue in 2025. It's like from a cold start. Our goal is to double that every year. Because there is a point where we can only scale so quickly, even internally, even with AI. But yeah, sorry, what was your question? That was a
Like, what's
segue to,
next? Like, yeah, like, no, like where you are. So
yeah,
anchoring where it's been, right? So from a
yeah.
2017, if we were to recap on the entire conversation of the journey, right? We started 2017 and we were kind of like the pick of the litter in a sense in terms of Silicon Valley and, that moment in time to then the peaks, the valleys, and now we're coming
Mhm.
back up on that climb and we figured out a model. And it's like, where will this model take us?
Yeah. So I think there are kind of a couple of paths that we're simultaneously working on. But one is like our first product was kind of, hire people. And then we layered on okay, and we'll train your internal people. We just did a big thing with one PE fund. I'm not going to name the name, but PE people will know who they are, where it was like, okay, how do we disseminate this through every single company? So they have, N companies in their portfolio. We did a specific cohort just for the companies of that specific portfolio where we flew everybody out. If the company's big enough, then we go to you. But yeah, if this particular fund was so spread out that there wasn't a place to go to. It was just easier to bring everybody to where we have economies of scale. So we, bring in a few people from each team, we train them, we drop in a few new people in each team, and then we just slowly try to like eat away at the rest of the organism until the entire company becomes AI first, the entire fund becomes AI first. So we're still figuring out exactly what the best mechanism is so that when a company shows up at our front door, we can really rapidly identify what it is that they need, what the things are. And sometimes we haven't done this officially yet, but we've seen so many companies that they come in and say, hey, we need an agent that does X and an agent that does Y. And we kind of give them, hey, we built this, like just go plug it in. We can kind of have like a starter pack so you can just like shoot off into AI land much faster and become much more effective. And we're not really like, I don't think we'll become a product company that sells that as a service, but like taking companies and turning them AI first, both internal and external in every way that we can it's not easy. And the before and after of the companies is just unrecognizable.
Do you think that
It's
there's
a lot of
a
fun.
potential market going downstream? So I understand that a significant amount of the momentum is creating this environment in this ecosystem and this moment in time that truly matters because the salaries are really high, the
Mhm.
experience is awesome, the ability to capture value and more is great for everyone. Everyone's winning in this situation from talent to the organization. And it's like an amazing mousetrap you're creating. Do you think that there's also a moment where you can bring it down and kind of go more into like a VA type of market and kind of take that talent and put them in a position from what you're learning to be able to have them become AI native and more productive and more efficient, more effective at a mass scale?
Yeah, I mean, engineering was the obvious place to start because A, that's the cost center. B, that's like where easy to measure. AI is good at it. We're starting to do more. We just got back from Andreessen Horowitz's basically their sales and LP team, and we just trained their sales team. So getting into the sales and marketing side of things.
Gotcha. So you are expanding roles and disciplines.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there are different, right now, there's different amounts of leverage that different role types can get from using AI. I mean, some of the biggest, like, if you can drop me in with a finance person for 2 weeks, I can have them walking away being like, oh my gosh, I've like automated everything. And like, here's all the data that you used to have to ask me for. And now I have an agent that's going to go and find unnecessary expenses and negotiate stuff. Like, there's all sorts of stuff that you can do. So we're just kind of working through the org at the points of highest leverage. Next is going to be sales and marketing. Then there's all sorts of operations roles. But yeah, there's like the whole world just looks like a playground of stuff that I want to do. And the hardest part is prioritizing it, you know?
Yeah, right. Because that's essentially what this feels like. And essentially, I was just trying to figure out exactly in terms of finding the focus and where we're going to flow to where we're going to go from where we
Yeah.
are, where we've been to where we want to be. And in terms of this episode, we covered a ton, right? We started the journey in 2017. It was a venture backed velocity story. We went through the trials and tribulations that we read about in terms of being a venture backed business on all aspects. You survived, and you survived to the moment in time where a client literally told you a model of something that they needed. And you were able to follow that need into money. And from that money, be able to build back into a model that now you're continuing to grow and expand. And it feels like has so much momentum behind it. It's just truly like a
Yeah.
phenomenal story, man. To
Well, we
truly
should have died, to
celebrate,
be totally
celebrate.
honest.
Yeah, like just like
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like you got to just survive long enough. You just stay in the game. Like versus like get
Yeah.
in business and then stay in business longer than anybody else. And like, dude, it's so much easier said than done. I can only imagine the moments in time in the middle there. And like
It was
maybe we have
wild.
you back on the
Yeah.
pod to go deeper, like friend of a pod episode, and we go deeper into some of those things that you feel comfortable about sharing. But in terms
Yeah,
of
I'd be happy to
today's
do that.
story and capturing, and I think it's a phenomenal story. It's a model for sure. I think there's probably folks in the audience listening that could be a great fit because honestly, it seems like you've
Yeah.
created a better mousetrap in terms of finding talent, bringing talent in, and getting them into better positions in organizations and roles than them just going and trying to like mass apply with AI or something to like 1,000,
Yeah.
because like this is a really challenging market, as is also for the employers. So folks listening,
Yeah.
everybody knows.
Well, employers have no idea how to hire right now. They're like, I put a job application up. I get 9,000 AI generated applications that are like clearly using AI to cater to exactly what I say in the JD. Everything matches perfectly. Like you can't filter the way you used to. And then you send them a bunch of challenges and then everybody cheats on the challenge anyways. It's really difficult to hire and filter right now.
It's
So
kind of a crazy
yeah.
moment in time. And for somebody who has experience, a decade's worth of experience, creating kind of essentially like coursework infrastructure and ecosystems to be able to
Mhm.
capture and guide folks through these moments in time, it feels like you found a good fit. For folks listening in the audience, if they wanted to get in contact, or potentially if they even wanted to refer some folks, because that's also
Yeah.
another powerful mechanism of the audience. A lot of folks, like everybody knows a person to a certain extent. I think in our audience, somebody's probably connecting on one side or the other. What would be the
I
best
mean,
possible path
we
forward?
we happily pay for student referrals. So if you know of a student that would be a good fit for Gauntlet, I think our rate right now is $1,000, couple $1,000 per student referred. So go to gauntletai.com and look for the referral stuff. I don't know the exact URL off the top of my head,
We'll link
but
to it in the comments for sure.
yeah. Ga-
Make this a sponsored episode.
And yeah, I mean, I'm very open and public, and so you can just message me on Twitter anytime. I'm Austen with an E, Austen on X. You can just DM me and I can respond and figure out how we can help.
Dig it. Austin, we appreciate you. Hopefully we can have you back on the pod and go deeper into some of the live
Anytime.
lessons, because I'm sure there's so much that we could pull back from the pain, the grit, the grind, the perseverance,
Yeah, we can have a
everything in
PTSD
between.
episode.
Like
Yeah.
literally do. Till next time, trust the process, commit to the journey. That's the pod.
Awesome. Thank you.